The planet Vorin was calm that night. Its twin moons shone above the dark forest, spreading a pale light over the hills and the tall silver trees. The air smelled of wet soil and strange flowers that opened only when the sun was gone. In that quiet land, a lone human named Ryan was setting up his small camp. Ryan was not a soldier or a famous explorer. He was a field technician from a human colony that had landed on Vorin 3 years ago. His job was to collect samples, test soil, and map the unknown areas around the main settlement. Most people preferred to stay close to the base where drones guarded the perimeter, but Ryan liked the wild silence of the forest. He said it made him feel peaceful. Away from machines and noise, he could think clearly. That evening, he reached a small clearing surrounded by thick vines. His boots sank slightly into the soft moss. A quiet stream flowed nearby, glimmering under the moons. He decided this was the right place to rest for the night. He placed his pack on the ground and started to build a fire using dried branches he had collected during the day. The air was cool and a faint mist moved between the trees. When the first sparks caught, Ryan smiled softly. The orange flames grew, bringing warmth and comfort. The glow painted the forest in shades of gold and shadow. He placed a small pot on the fire and began to heat a pack of dried rations. The smell of cooking food mixed with the scent of the forest. He felt calm, as if he were the only living being on the planet, but he was not alone. Far away, deep within the forest, shapes moved silently among the trees. A tribe of forest dwellers lived there, unseen by humans. They were tall and strong, their skin marked with glowing lines that looked like veins of light. Their eyes were sharp and bright, able to see clearly in the dark. They hunted small animals and lived in harmony with the forest. Fire was unknown to them. They used lightstones, cold crystals that gave a gentle white glow, but none of them had ever seen true flames before. That night, when Ryan's fire rose high, a soft orange light spread across the woods. It was unlike the steady glow of their stones. It danced and flickered, moving as if alive. The tribe saw it from a distance. Their leader, a woman named Mira, stood on a hill and looked toward the strange glow. Her people gathered around her, whispering with worry and curiosity. Some believed it was a spirit's call. Others thought it was a sign of danger. Mira watched the light for a long time before she spoke. She decided that they would send a small group to watch from afar. She wanted to know what creature dared to bring fire into their sacred woods. Back in the clearing, Ryan finished eating and leaned against his pack. He opened a small device, a field scanner, to record air data. The machine beeped softly as it measured temperature, radiation, and humidity. Everything was normal. He saved the readings and turned it off. Then he looked up at the sky. Stars covered it like dust. The twin moons moved slowly behind thin clouds. Ryan felt a strange mix of wonder and loneliness. Humanity had reached far into space, yet the stars still made him feel small. He added another branch to the fire. The flames rose again, brighter than before. Tiny sparks floated upward and disappeared into the dark. Ryan smiled, remembering the old stories his grandfather used to tell about camping on Earth. Fire is life, his grandfather had said. It keeps the night away. Ryan now understood those words more deeply than ever. A sudden crack came from the trees. It was a small sound, but in the quiet night it felt loud. Ryan froze. He slowly turned his head, listening carefully. Another sound followed, a soft rustle like feet brushing against leaves. His hand moved toward his sidearm. He didn't want to use it unless he had to, but he was too far from the colony to take chances. He stood up slowly, his eyes scanning the shadows. The fire flickered behind him, throwing moving patterns of light on the trees. The forest seemed alive, breathing with faint noises. Yet nothing attacked. After a few minutes, he relaxed slightly, thinking it might have been a small animal. He sat again and tried to shake off the unease. But deep between the trees, several glowing eyes were watching him. The scouting group from Mira's tribe had arrived. They moved silently, crouching low, hiding behind large roots and leaves. Their eyes reflected the firelight like polished amber. They watched the human's every move. They had never seen a creature like him. His pale skin, strange clothes, and the metal objects around him were unlike anything in their world. The fire, however, caught their attention the most. It was alive and yet not alive. It ate the wood and grew, giving light and heat. The tribeswomen whispered softly, wondering if the being who made it was a god or a fool. One of them moved closer, stepping on a dry stick. The crack echoed again. Ryan looked sharply in that direction. He turned on his flashlight, a beam of white light cutting through the trees. The watchers ducked quickly, vanishing into the dark. Ryan saw nothing but leaves and mist. Still, his heart beat faster. He stood with the flashlight in one hand and his sidearm in the other. He called out softly, "Is someone there?" His voice echoed faintly. Only the night answered him. After a few minutes, he turned the flashlight off and sat again. He added another piece of wood to the fire and tried to appear calm. He was used to wild animals, but this felt different. The air carried a strange tension, like a storm waiting to break. Ryan took out his scanner again, hoping it might show something. For a moment, the screen flickered with faint signals, heat signatures, several of them close by. But then the readings vanished. He frowned. "Must be interference," he muttered quietly. In the forest, Mira watched from a distance. She saw how the human used his tools and moved with caution. He did not seem like a beast. He looked tired, maybe even harmless. The tribe members looked at her, waiting for her decision. Mira raised her hand, signaling them to stay back. She wanted to observe longer. The fire's light reflected in her eyes. It was beautiful and frightening at the same time. Hours passed. Ryan eventually grew sleepy. The fire had burned low, leaving soft embers glowing red. He stretched his blanket on the ground and lay down beside the warmth. His pack was close to his head, his weapon within reach. The forest around him whispered with night sounds, the hum of insects, the chirp of strange winged creatures, and the distant rush of water. Slowly, Ryan's eyes closed. The stars above watched silently as he drifted into light sleep. When the fire dimmed even more, Mira and her group moved closer, their steps noiseless. They stood at the edge of the clearing, hidden behind thick vines. The faint red glow lit their faces, showing curiosity instead of fear. Mira stepped forward slightly and reached out her hand toward the warmth. The air felt hot around the dying fire. She pulled her hand back quickly and looked at her people in surprise. They smiled in wonder. None of them had felt such heat before. For a long time they watched the fire's last embers fade. Finally, before dawn, the watchers left quietly. They returned to their hidden village deep in the forest. Mira carried in her mind the image of the strange human and his living light. She knew their world was changing. Something new had entered the forest, something powerful, something that could bring both hope and danger. When morning came, Ryan woke to the sound of birds singing in high branches. The sun was rising, casting golden light through the mist. The fire was almost gone, only ashes and smoke remained. He yawned and stretched. Everything seemed peaceful again. He packed his things and prepared to continue his survey. He did not notice the faint footprints near his camp, shaped unlike any humans. The tribe had come and gone without a trace. As he walked away, the wind carried a whisper through the trees, like voices calling softly in an unknown tongue. Ryan paused for a moment, sensing he was being watched again, but saw nothing. He smiled faintly and continued his journey, unaware that he had already been noticed by the hidden hearts of the forest. Far behind him, Mira stood among the trees, watching from a distance. The fire had shown her something that her people had never seen before. She looked at the smoke rising in the air and thought of the man who made it. For the first time, she felt curiosity toward an outsider. The memory of the dancing flames stayed in her eyes. She knew she would see that light again. Morning sunlight filtered through the tall silver trees of Voron's forest. The mist slowly lifted, revealing endless stretches of green and gold. Strange birds with crystal-like wings flew between branches, making soft calls that echoed in the quiet. Ryan walked carefully through the undergrowth, holding his scanning device in one hand and his pack over his shoulder. He was following a trail that led deeper into the forest, collecting samples of glowing moss and recording readings for the research team back at the colony. He felt calm again after the strange night before. Still, a small part of him could not forget the feeling of being watched. He told himself it must have been an animal, maybe curious after seeing the fire. Yet, the thought of glowing eyes hidden in the darkness kept returning to his mind. He shook it off and focused on his work. Ryan reached a small hill where the trees thinned, giving him a clear view of the forest valley below. It was beautiful. Sunlight danced on the surface of a winding stream. The air shimmered with the soft blue light of pollen drifting through the wind. He took a deep breath, enjoying the peace. Then he took out his datapad and began writing his report. Soil stable. No radiation spikes. Environment rich in organic energy, he said quietly as he typed. He planned to return to the colony in 2 days after mapping the nearby ridge. But far behind him, the Watchers had not gone far. Mira's tribe had returned to observe him again. They had spoken about the fire all night. Some feared it. Others admired it. Mira believed the fire was not a curse but a gift, a thing to learn from. She wanted to understand the strange visitor who brought such power, so at dawn she chose 6 of her best hunters to follow the human silently. They moved like shadows. Their feet made no sound. Their bodies blended with the leaves and light. From a distance they watched Rian climb the hill and record his data. They saw his tools and strange machines. They whispered softly among themselves, wondering what kind of being needed such things to survive. Rian stopped to rest under a tree. He drank water and wiped sweat from his forehead. As he reached for a fruit bar from his pack, a small sound came from nearby. A dry leaf cracked. He turned sharply. His eyes scanned the trees. Nothing moved. The forest was still. He waited, then slowly relaxed. Yet the feeling returned stronger now. He felt eyes on him. To test his guess, Rian picked up a small piece of metal from his kit and tossed it into the bushes. It hit something solid. There was a quick motion, a flicker of light, then silence again. His pulse quickened. He stood up and called out, "Hello? Is someone there?" His voice carried through the forest. Only wind replied. Hidden behind thick roots, Mira's group watched with surprise. They did not expect him to speak to the forest. Mira looked at his face and saw no anger. His voice was calm, not threatening. She raised her hand to stop her people from moving. She wanted to see what he would do next. Rian slowly reached for his scanner and turned it on. The screen flashed, showing faint shapes at the edge of detection. Heat signatures. There were at least 6 of them, close and moving slowly around him. His hand hovered near his sidearm. He did not draw it. He wanted to avoid conflict. He switched the scanner to record mode, pretending not to notice the readings. Minutes passed. Then a strange call echoed through the trees. It was like a mix between singing and speaking. Rian looked around, puzzled. The sound repeated, soft and rhythmic. He followed it with his eyes but saw nothing. Slowly the shadows moved and figures began to appear between the trees. They stepped forward carefully, their movements graceful and silent. Rian's breath caught as he saw them clearly for the first time. They were tall, with light markings glowing faintly on their skin. Their hair was braided with vines and small crystals that sparkled under sunlight. Their clothes looked like woven leaves and smooth fibers. Their eyes glowed like liquid amber. They surrounded him in a half circle. None spoke. The air grew still. Rian held his breath, unsure what to do. His instincts told him not to move suddenly. He raised his hands slowly, showing they were empty. "I mean no harm," he said quietly, though he knew they could not understand his language. Mira stepped forward. Her people parted slightly to let her pass. She was tall and confident, her eyes calm and watchful. In her hand she carried a spear tipped with a shining crystal. She stopped a few steps away from Rian and studied him carefully. He felt her gaze like a weight. She tilted her head slightly, then pointed at the scanner on his belt. Rian understood she was curious. He removed it slowly and placed it on the ground between them. The device beeped once, then went quiet. Mira crouched and looked at it closely. She touched it with the end of her spear. Surprised when the screen lit up again, she stepped back slightly, her people whispering in their soft language. Rian smiled a little and said, "It's safe. It just measures air." He knew she could not understand, but his calm tone made her relax a bit. To show trust, Rian picked up a small fruit from his pack and offered it. Mira hesitated, then took it carefully. She smelled it, then gave it to one of her people, who tasted it and smiled. The tension eased a little. Rian sat slowly near the fire pit from the previous night and took out his lighter. He struck it, creating a small flame. The tribe gasped softly, stepping back with surprise. The little flame danced in his hand and he smiled gently. He lit a dry leaf and let it burn for a moment before putting it out. Mira's eyes widened with fascination. She pointed to the flame and then to Rian. Her people whispered excitedly. They called him Keeper of Light in their tongue. For them, fire was not natural. They used crystals and energy from plants for light, but they had never seen heat and flame together. Rian understood that they were amazed. He stood and gathered a few dry branches. With slow movements, he rebuilt the campfire from last night. Mira watched closely, memorizing every step. When the fire caught, it flared bright orange. The tribe stepped back again, covering their eyes. But Mira stayed still, feeling the warmth. She reached out her hand carefully, touching the air near the flames. A smile touched her lips. She turned to her people and said a few words. They nodded and lowered their weapons. For the first time, fear turned into wonder. Ryan saw it and felt relieved. He gestured toward the fire, then to them, inviting them to sit near. They hesitated, then slowly came closer. The warmth touched their faces, and their glowing markings reflected the light beautifully. For a while there was only quiet. The crackle of fire and the sound of wind filled the clearing. Ryan took his data pad and drew a simple picture in the dirt. A circle for the planet, a small mark for his ship, and a line showing where he had come from. Mira watched closely. Then she used a stick to draw beside his picture. Mountains, rivers, and a symbol that looked like a spiral. Ryan guessed it was her tribe's mark. They exchanged drawings and gestures for a long time. Though they did not share words, they began to understand each other a little. Mira learned that he was not from this world. Ryan learned that she led the tribe that lived in these forests. When the sun began to set, the tribe stood up. Mira looked at Ryan and then at the fire. She touched her chest and said something softly that he could not understand. But her tone was kind. Then she gestured for her people to follow. Before leaving, she pointed to the fire again and smiled faintly, as if thanking him for showing them something beautiful. Ryan watched them disappear into the trees. The forest returned to silence, but it felt different now. It no longer seemed empty. He sat near the fire and thought about what had happened. He had made contact with an unknown intelligent species, and it had gone peacefully. He knew this was important for the colony, but more than that, it was something personal. It felt like the start of something greater. As night fell again, Ryan added more wood to the fire. The flames rose, bright and alive. Somewhere far away, Mira and her people watched the glow from their hidden camp. They whispered about the strange man who could command living light. They did not yet know his world or his purpose, but they felt that his arrival would change their lives forever. The next morning on the planet, Vorin was bright and peaceful. Soft sunlight passed through the tall silver trees, making the forest shine like glass. The leaves moved gently in the wind, and the air was cool and full of the sound of insects humming. Ryan woke up early, sitting beside the ashes of his fire. He felt rested but thoughtful. The memory of last night stayed clear in his mind. The glowing tribe, their cautious eyes, and Mira's calm face. He looked around the clearing, half expecting to see them again, but there was no one. Only a few footprints remained near the fire, pressed into the soft soil. Ryan smiled quietly. They had really been there. It was not a dream. He decided to stay one more day before returning to his base. He wanted to see if the tribe would come again. Ryan spent the morning collecting water and checking his scanner. The readings showed slight energy traces near the edge of the forest, signs that the tribe might be nearby. He cooked a small breakfast and prepared a few tools in case they returned. Deep inside, he felt a strange excitement. He had spoken without words to another intelligent species. That kind of moment was rare even for trained explorers. Far away, Mira's tribe was also talking about the human. They gathered in a circle near their camp, where a tall tree stood with glowing roots. The tribe members looked at Mira as she spoke. Her voice was calm but firm. She explained how the human used fire, how he showed no sign of violence, and how he had offered them food. Some of the elders worried that his kind might bring danger to the forest, but Mira believed he meant no harm. After long discussion, they agreed to approach him again, this time without hiding. They wanted to learn more about his strange power and his machines. Mira prepared a few gifts, woven baskets filled with fruit, dried leaves used for medicine, and a crystal that glowed softly in the dark. She wanted to show the same respect he had shown them. By noon, Ryan sat near the fire pit, repairing a small sensor device. The air grew still for a moment, and then he heard light footsteps behind him. He turned slowly and saw Mira standing there again, her tribe behind her. Their faces were calm but curious. Ryan smiled in welcome and stood up. He said softly, "Hello again." Mira did not understand the words, but she felt the warmth in his voice. She stepped forward and placed the woven basket on the ground in front of him. Ryan looked at it with surprise and then gently touched his chest to show gratitude. Mira nodded slightly, pleased that he understood. He opened the basket carefully. Inside were bright orange fruits and a crystal that glowed with a blue light. The crystal felt cool in his hand. He admired it for a moment, then placed it beside his pack. To return the gesture, he offered them a metal cup filled with clean water from his purifier. Mira accepted it and tasted a little. She smiled, realizing it was the purest water she had ever drunk. The tribe sat around him again, forming a half circle. They looked more relaxed than before. Ryan took a deep breath and decided to try something new. He picked up a flat piece of wood and began to draw simple pictures using a burned stick. First, he drew the symbol of a human, just a stick figure. Then he drew the shape of a planet and a small ship above it. He pointed to himself and then to the ship, trying to show that he had come from far away. Mira watched carefully, her golden eyes following every motion. She picked up another piece of wood and began to draw beside his picture. She made shapes that looked like mountains and trees, then a spiral shape that Ryan recognized from before. She pointed to the forest around them and to herself, showing that this was her home. Ryan nodded with a smile. Even without words, they were slowly learning about each other. He took out his datapad and turned the screen toward her. It showed an image of his colony base, a few silver buildings near a lake. Mira leaned closer, her eyes widening at the sight of such clean shapes and metal walls. Her people whispered in amazement. Ryan zoomed in to show the gardens and the humans walking there. He pointed to them, then to himself. Mira understood that there were many of his kind. She seemed thoughtful for a long time. Then she gestured toward the horizon, where the forest grew thicker and darker. She spoke softly in her language, drawing something that looked like a large animal with long legs and sharp claws. She pointed to it and then shook her head. Ryan understood she was warning him. Something dangerous lived deeper in the woods. He nodded seriously and drew a circle around the creature, marking it as a threat. Mira seemed pleased that he understood. The others murmured quietly among themselves, impressed that the stranger could follow their meaning through gestures alone. Ryan decided to show them something else. He took his small portable power cell from his pack. It looked like a black stone but gave off a faint hum. When he pressed a button, the top of the device glowed blue. The tribe stepped back slightly, then moved closer again, fascinated. He placed the cell on the ground and connected it to a small light emitter. A bright white glow filled the clearing. The tribe gasped softly. Mira reached out, touching the glow gently. It was warm but steady, not like fire. She smiled and spoke softly to her people, probably explaining that it was safe. Ryan watched their expressions and felt proud. He was sharing human knowledge, and they were not afraid. For hours they exchanged gestures and objects. Mira showed him how to use crushed leaves to heal small cuts. She also gave him a sample of a plant that glowed faintly when touched. Ryan collected it carefully, planning to study it later. In return, he showed them how to use a small heat plate to cook food quickly. The tribe found it amusing when it sizzled and released steam. As the sun began to lower, long shadows stretched across the forest. The air turned cool again. The tribe prepared to leave, but Mira stayed a little longer. She looked at Ryan and then pointed at the sky. The first star was visible. She made a gesture like a circle with her hands, then pointed to him, and then to the forest. Ryan guessed she was saying something about connection, maybe friendship. He smiled and nodded. Before leaving, Mira took the crystal from her gift basket and placed it near the fire. She said something softly and tapped the ground twice. Ryan understood it as a sign of peace or blessing. She then turned and walked away, her tribe following quietly into the trees. When the last of them disappeared, Ryan sat by the fire, holding the glowing crystal in his hand. It pulsed gently like a heartbeat. He placed it on a rock beside him and watched it glow through the night. As the fire flickered, he recorded a message on his datapad. Field log day 7. Made second contact with the native species. No signs of aggression. Communication improving through gestures and shared symbols. Leader named Mira appears intelligent and cooperative. Possible foundation for cultural exchange. He saved the log and closed his pad. Then he leaned back, watching the fire. His thoughts wandered to Mira's calm eyes and the way her people reacted to light. They lived so close to nature, so balanced, yet they had never seen something as simple as fire. To them it was a wonder. To him it was survival. He felt a quiet respect growing for them. Hours later, as the night deepened, strange lights moved in the distance. Ryan noticed them between the trees. They were not torches or the tribe's lightstones. These lights were green and steady like eyes. His hand reached for his scanner, which showed faint movement nearby. He frowned but stayed still. The lights moved away after a few minutes, vanishing into the darkness. He guessed they might be some nocturnal creatures. But in Mira's village far away, the tribe saw those same lights from their side and grew worried. Mira looked toward the forest edge, her face tense. She knew what those lights meant. The beasts of the lower valley were moving again. The next day everything would change. The peaceful exchange between human and tribe would soon be tested by something far older and far more dangerous than either of them could imagine. Morning came slowly to the forests of Vorin. The first light touched the tall trees and spread across the green leaves. Dew covered the ground, shining like silver dust. The forest looked peaceful, but under that calm beauty, something dangerous was waking. Ryan was still at his camp near the old fire pit. He stretched his arms and looked around. Birds flew between the branches and small animals ran through the moss. He felt relaxed but also alert. The strange green lights he had seen last night stayed in his mind. He wanted to believe they were harmless creatures, yet something about them felt wrong. He switched on his scanner and pointed it toward the direction where he had seen the lights. The screen showed faint energy readings moving slowly underground. They were deep but many. Ryan frowned and saved the data. He planned to tell the colony about it when he returned. For now, he decided to stay calm and finish his work. Far away, inside the hidden village of the forest tribe, Mira stood before the glowing root tree. Around her, the elders and warriors gathered with worried faces. They too had seen the green lights at the edge of the forest. The lights belonged to the creatures that lived below the soil. Long ago, those beasts had attacked the tribe's ancestors. They were called burrowers. Their bodies were thick like armor, with claws that could break stone. For many seasons they had been silent, but Mira now feared they were awake again. The tribe murmured nervously. Some wanted to leave the forest and hide in the mountains, but Mira refused. The forest was their home. She believed they could defend it, yet she also knew they were not strong enough alone. She thought of the human with the light weapon and the fire. Maybe his tools could help them. It was a risk, but she decided to take it. Mira took 2 warriors with her and started toward Ryan's camp. The journey took hours through dense woods and uneven ground. The air grew warmer and the soil trembled softly under their feet. The burrowers were moving closer. When they reached the clearing, Ryan was busy repairing a broken antenna. He looked up as soon as he heard the sound of feet. He saw Mira and her companions appear between the trees, their faces tense. He smiled at first, but her expression told him something was wrong. He stood quickly and asked, "What happened?" He knew she would not understand the words, but his tone carried urgency. Mira pointed toward the ground, then made a clawing motion with her hands. She drew lines in the dirt, showing tunnels. Ryan watched carefully and realized she was warning him about something beneath the surface. He activated his scanner again and showed her the readings. The blinking dots on the screen matched the direction she had pointed. Mira nodded, confirming his fear. Suddenly, the ground near them shook. A low rumble echoed through the trees. Birds fled in panic. Ryan steadied himself as the soil cracked open several meters away. From the hole, a huge creature crawled out. Its body was covered in dark plates and green light shone between them. It had 6 legs, each ending in sharp claws, and its mouth opened wide, showing rows of crystal teeth. Ryan pulled out his pulse rifle and aimed. Mira shouted to her warriors, who took positions with their crystal spears. The beast let out a deep roar and charged toward them. Ryan fired 3 shots, blue energy flashing through the air. The pulses hit the creature's side, leaving glowing marks but not stopping it. Mira threw her spear, hitting one of its eyes. The beast screeched in pain and turned wildly, smashing a tree in its rage. The ground shook again as 2 more burrowers emerged. The forest filled with the sound of breaking roots and rumbling soil. Ryan switched his rifle to a higher setting and shouted for Mira to move back. He fired continuously, the blasts cutting through the air. One of the creatures fell, its armor cracked by the energy shots. The others kept coming. Mira's warriors fought bravely. They used crystal-tipped spears that glowed when they struck the beasts. The tribe's crystals reacted to the burrowers' energy, creating bursts of light that slowed their movement. Still, the battle was hard. One warrior was knocked aside by a sweeping claw. Ryan ran forward and fired again, driving the creature away from her. He pulled her up and shouted something encouraging, even though she could not understand his words. For nearly an hour, the fight continued. The clearing was torn apart and smoke rose from burning trees. Ryan used all his strength and focus. His weapon grew hot and sweat covered his face. Mira fought beside him, fast and fearless. When the last creature finally fell with a heavy thud, silence filled the air again. Ryan lowered his weapon slowly, breathing hard. The smell of burned earth surrounded them. Mira looked at the fallen beasts and then at Rian. Her golden eyes shone with both relief and respect. She walked to him and touched his arm lightly, a gesture of thanks. Ryan smiled and nodded. The tribe's warriors examined the bodies of the burrowers. They noticed cracks in the creatures' shells where the blue energy had hit. Mira understood now that the humans' tools were powerful. She said something to her warriors, who began collecting pieces of the crystal armor. They wanted to study it later. Ryan looked around at the damage. The forest floor was torn open, and black smoke rose from the holes. He realized the burrowers had probably been living below for centuries. Something must have disturbed them, maybe mining activity from the colony or natural movement of the planet's crust. He made a note in his datapad. Underground life forms. Extremely aggressive. Origin possibly pre-human settlement. He turned toward Mira and pointed toward the deeper forest, then to the scanner. The readings showed more movements underground, far larger numbers. Mira saw it too, and her face grew serious. She gestured to him, pointing toward her village. He understood at once. She wanted him to come. They needed to defend her people. Without hesitation, Rian packed his equipment and followed her. They moved quickly through the forest. The path was rough, but Mira's tribe knew every turn. The glowing crystals on their clothes guided the way through the growing dusk. Behind them, the earth shook again, distant but stronger. After a long run, they reached the hidden village. It was built around the great root tree, whose light spread softly across the huts made of wood and vines. Children and elders looked frightened as Mira entered with the human. Many of them had never seen him before. They stepped back, whispering nervously. Mira raised her hand to calm them. She spoke loudly, explaining what had happened. Her voice carried strength, and soon the fear turned to determination. Ryan set up a defensive perimeter using motion sensors and small pulse traps. The tribe watched with amazement as he placed the small metallic devices in a circle around the village. He explained with gestures that these would warn them if the creatures came again. Mira nodded and ordered her warriors to help. They dug shallow holes for the traps and covered them with leaves. When the sun set, the forest grew quiet again, too quiet. Everyone gathered near the glowing tree. Ryan checked his rifle and gave Mira one of his spare light flares. He showed her how to use it by pulling the pin and throwing it. The flare burst into bright white light that lasted for minutes. Mira smiled, understanding its purpose. As night deepened, the ground began to tremble once more. The traps blinked red and a sharp sound echoed through the village. Ryan looked at his scanner. The readings were much larger now. Dozens of signals were moving toward them. He shouted to Mira, and she responded by calling her warriors to prepare. The tribe formed a line around the tree, their crystal spears glowing brighter than ever. The earth cracked open near the edge of the village, and green light spilled out. The first wave of burrowers emerged, screeching and snapping their claws. Ryan fired his rifle, hitting one in the chest. The pulse traps exploded, slowing the rest. Mira and her warriors charged forward, striking with precision. Sparks and light filled the air. The beasts tried to climb the tree roots, but Ryan aimed and fired until his weapon's battery flashed low. He reached into his pack and pulled out a spare energy cell. Mira saw him struggling and ran to cover him, blocking an attack with her spear. Her quick movement saved him from a claw strike. Ryan reloaded, aimed, and fired again, destroying the creature that attacked them. The battle raged long into the night. Fire and crystal light mixed, turning the forest into a battlefield of glowing colors. Ryan and the tribe fought side by side, humans and aliens united by the same goal: to protect life from the monsters below. When dawn finally broke, the sounds of battle faded. The ground stopped shaking. Around the village lay the broken shells of the burrowers. The tribe cheered weakly, tired but victorious. Mira stood tall, breathing hard, her spear cracked but still glowing. Ryan looked at her and smiled. Together they had defended her people. Mira walked to him and placed her hand on his chest again, repeating the gesture of honor. The tribe watched in silence. Then she turned to them and raised her spear high. They cheered louder, their voices echoing through the forest. Ryan looked around at the peaceful morning. The sun shone through the smoke and the great tree glowed brighter than ever. He realized something important had happened. Two different worlds had stood together against danger and survived. He looked at Mira and said softly, "We did it." Even though she did not know his words, she understood his meaning. She smiled, and for the first time, hope spread through both of their hearts. The morning sun rose slowly over the forest of Voron. The trees stood tall and calm after the night of battle. Smoke drifted gently through the air, carrying the scent of burned soil and crystal dust. The ground still bore marks of claws and fire. The tribe of Mira moved quietly through the ruins of their village, repairing what could be saved. They had survived, but the cost was heavy. Many huts were broken, and several warriors were hurt. Yet there was no sadness in their eyes, only pride. Rian stood near the edge of the village looking at the fallen creatures. The burrowers were larger up close, their armor thick and black like stone. He scanned their bodies again and took samples for study. Their crystal cores still glowed faintly with green energy. He stored them carefully in his data pack, knowing this discovery would change how humans understood this planet. The colony would need to learn about these creatures to prevent another attack. Mira walked toward him, holding a wooden bowl of clear water. Her arm was wrapped in cloth, but she did not show pain. She offered the water with a gentle nod. Ryan accepted it, smiling gratefully. As he drank, he noticed her eyes studying the strange tools he carried. She seemed curious about everything: the rifle, the scanner, and even the wrist communicator he used. Ryan decided to show her how it worked. He pressed a small button and a blue light appeared, showing a map of the area. Mira's eyes widened with wonder. He pointed to the marks on the map, showing the deep tunnels that spread under the forest. Mira understood at once. She took a stick and drew lines on the ground, adding areas she knew from the tribe's memory. When she finished, they both saw the same truth. The burrower's nest was not far away, deep under the old hills near the river. If they wanted to protect the forest forever, they needed to destroy that nest. Mira looked at Ryan and placed her hand on her chest, then pointed toward the hills. Her meaning was clear. She was going to end this danger. Ryan hesitated for a moment, then nodded. He could not let her go alone. He would go with her. The elders of the tribe gathered when Mira told them the plan. Some were afraid, but they trusted her. They had seen what she and the human had done together. The oldest elder, whose hair was white like ash, spoke slowly, saying that the forest would never be safe until the burrower's heart was broken. He gave Mira a small crystal pendant from the root tree, a symbol of protection. Then he turned to Ryan and placed his hand over his heart, a gesture of respect. The tribe saw him not as an outsider anymore, but as one of them. Before leaving, Ryan prepared his tools. He checked his rifle, energy cells, and a small explosive charge from his pack. He planned to use it to collapse the tunnels. Mira gathered her strongest warriors, 6 in total. Each carried a glowing spear and wore light armor made from the fallen burrower's shells. Together they moved toward the hills under the bright morning sky. The path was long and quiet. The forest seemed to hold its breath as they passed. The animals stayed hidden, and the wind whispered softly through the leaves. Ryan led with his scanner, watching the signals grow stronger as they got closer. The hills soon rose ahead of them, dark and rocky. Cracks covered their surface, and a green mist drifted from below. The entrance to the nest was near. They reached a wide opening covered in thick roots and black sand. The smell of heat and stone filled the air. Mira signaled the group to stop. She crouched near the entrance and touched the ground. It was warm. The creatures were close. Ryan placed his hand on his weapon and looked around. There were signs of movement, fresh claw marks and trails of slime. He took a deep breath and nodded to Mira. It was time. They entered slowly, light crystals tied to their belts to guide the way. The tunnel walls glowed faintly from the energy that flowed through the rocks. Strange sounds echoed, deep rumbles like breathing from below. The deeper they went, the hotter it became. The air shimmered and the floor shook slightly. After a while, they reached a wide chamber filled with hundreds of glowing eggs. The green light was strong there, almost blinding. It was the heart of the nest. Rian stared at the sight, amazed and disturbed. Each egg pulsed with light, alive and waiting to hatch. He knew that if they did nothing, the entire forest, maybe even the colony, would be destroyed. He took the explosive charge from his bag and set it near the largest cluster of eggs. Mira watched him carefully. She did not understand the device, but she trusted him. Suddenly, a loud roar filled the chamber. The ground trembled violently, and dust fell from the ceiling. From the darkness ahead, the largest burrower appeared. Its body was massive, twice the size of the others they had fought. The creature's eyes burned bright green and its claws dug deep into the rock. It was the queen of the nest. The warriors formed a line instantly. Mira shouted a command and their crystal weapons glowed brighter. Ryan adjusted his rifle's setting to maximum power. The queen moved forward, shaking the ground with every step. The fight began. Ryan fired the first shot, hitting the queen's chest. The light burst, but the creature kept advancing. Mira's warriors attacked from both sides, striking the legs and tail. Sparks flew where crystal met armor. The queen roared and struck back, throwing two warriors aside with one swing. Ryan moved quickly, aiming for the glowing marks between the plates. His shots weakened the armor, and Mira's spear found the opening, piercing deep. The queen screamed, shaking the walls of the cave. Ryan ran to check on the fallen warriors. They were hurt but alive. He turned back and saw the queen still standing, furious. He knew they had little time. He pulled the remote for the explosive from his belt. Mira noticed and shouted for her warriors to fall back. The queen charged toward Ryan, but Mira leaped in front of him, blocking the attack. Her spear broke, but she stood firm. Ryan pressed the button. A sharp sound filled the cave as the explosive activated. The queen looked around, confused by the sudden noise. Ryan grabbed Mira's arm and pulled her toward the exit. The others followed, running as fast as they could. Behind them, the light from the eggs grew brighter and brighter. The explosion came like thunder. The entire hill shook and fire burst through the tunnels. Rocks fell, sealing the entrance. The green light vanished as the nest collapsed. The burrower's queen and her eggs were gone. The forest trembled for a moment, then grew still again. Ryan and the tribe stood outside, breathing hard. Dust covered their clothes and smoke rose behind them. Mira looked back at the sealed hill, then at Ryan. Her eyes were filled with both sadness and relief. The danger was over. The forest would live again. They walked back to the village in silence. When they arrived, the people gathered around them, cheering with joy when they saw Mira alive. The elder came forward and placed his hands on both of them, thanking the spirits of the forest. The tribe sang their song of victory, a deep, echoing rhythm that filled the air. Ryan stood among them, smiling. He felt a sense of belonging he had never known before. Later that night, the tribe lit a great fire in the center of the village. The flames rose high, reflecting in every face. Mira sat beside Ryan, holding the crystal pendant she had worn into the battle. She placed it in his hand and said a few soft words. Ryan understood from her tone that she was giving it as a sign of trust and friendship. He smiled and placed his hand over hers, thanking her in his own quiet way. Above them, the stars of Vorin shone brighter than ever. Ryan looked at the sky and thought of the human colony far away. He would return soon to tell them what had happened, but he knew this forest and its people would always stay in his heart. Humanity had come to this world to build a future, but tonight he realized that true strength came not from machines or weapons, but from unity and courage. Mira watched the fire, and then looked at him. In her eyes there was a calm pride. She knew their worlds had changed forever. The tribe would rebuild and the forest would heal. Ryan would leave one day, but the memory of their fight and their friendship would stay. The humans in the tribe would not be strangers anymore. They had shared danger, victory, and hope. As the fire burned, Ryan stood and looked at everyone gathered around. He spoke softly, though few understood his words. "You are not alone," he said. Mira did not need translation. She smiled, repeating her tribe's blessing, a word that meant life, peace, and strength. The wind moved through the trees, carrying the sound of the fire and their voices. Above the forest, the stars shimmered like silver eyes watching over them. The night was no longer dark or fearful. It was alive with warmth and promise. For the first time since coming to this strange planet, Ryan felt complete. Humanity had lit a flame here, a flame that would never fade. And deep in the forest of Vorin, under the shining stars, that flame of unity continued to burn, strong and eternal.